Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Think With Me, this time on Friday? Not Thursday? I'm Justin with Effective. Thanks for joining me today, and I am excited to do this one. We've got a lot of fun stuff. Happy July, by the way. It's now July, and that's exciting, right? We're halfway through the year, and yeah, this year's been a good one so far. We got a few fun things planned for today's live stream. First, I've got a question about rolling back tasks to the next day in Obsidian, which we'll talk about in just first up. Next, a question from Barry about the difference between productivity and knowledge management. So we've got some interesting details to dig into there. And then lastly, I want to spend the majority of today's stream talking about my productivity system. The last 3 weeks, we've been digging into some of the high level questions that I've been wrestling with. And I got some new insights in the last couple days that have helped me, I guess, nail down the approach. And we'll dig into that a little bit more in a few minutes. But first, before we dive into questions today, I want to do a shout out to Eldar, who joined as a member on the stream last week. So thanks so much for staying effective, Eldar. And if you are interested in becoming a channel member, all you got to do is hit the join button down below or browse to youtube.com/effectiveco/join to become a channel member. You can either join at a 99-cent membership or $3.99 membership per month. And all this does is helps us create more awesome content like this for you. So thanks everyone who is a member. Thanks to Eldar for joining last week. And I'm really excited to dive into the first question today. Amar asks, is there a way to implement the Ivy method of rolling back undone tasks to the next day in Obsidian? So the way that I understand this is that you list out all of your tasks in your daily note in Obsidian. And if you don't get all of those tasks done in a day, then you want them to automatically move to the next day so that they roll over. If you're used to using a task manager like Things 3, or even Todoist does this to some degree, if you don't complete a task on a given day in Things, it will just automatically bump it to the next day. It won't necessarily flag it as overdue like it does in Todoist or maybe even in OmniFocus, but it does roll it over automatically. So he's looking for a way, it sounds like this person's looking for a way to do this inside of Obsidian. There is a plugin that I found. I haven't tested this out, but there is a plugin that I found that does this, and it looks like it's actively maintained with the last commit being on May 17th. So that's a good thing. That is one thing to be aware of trying to do any sort of task management and building a system around Obsidian, especially if you're using community plugins, is those plugins need to be maintained long term. For-profit software is sometimes a better bet for doing that. Obsidian offers a lot of flexibility, so if you're open to doing that, great. This is a pretty simple plugin, it looks like, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. But it's the Obsidian Rollover Daily To-Dos plugin. And looking here, it's triggered automatically when a new daily note is created and will roll over any incomplete to-do items from the previous daily note, yesterday or a week ago. So this is really handy because if you don't touch Obsidian every single day and put to-do items in there, it still will roll over all the items from the last created daily note. So that is interesting. Hold on just a moment here. I apologize for the interruption. I am just going to be checking. I got to check my stream health here. It looks like something's goofy on the YouTube side. So I apologize for that. Must be an issue with Restream. I'm actually been considering, on a side tangent here, I have been considering potentially switching up how I'm handling my streaming because I've been using Restream, but the last couple of streams I've had these weird issues with Restream where the bitrate drops or it completely cuts out, and I'm not sure why. It's not my internet connection, I'm pretty sure. I guess I could do a speed test. See, and this might totally. Okay, Steven, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm getting flagged by I'm getting flagged by YouTube saying, "Hey, your bitrate is too low." So, okay, glad to hear that. I'll just skip that for now. But anyway, looking at handling the streams a little bit differently in the future, but shouldn't impact the overall experience of it. But yeah, let me know in the chat if it's kind of janky or if anything's weird with it. Back to the Obsidian daily to-dos rollover plugin. This looks pretty interesting. You can have it automatically roll over on the creation of a new daily note, or I don't know why I just did that. Thanks, hand. Or you guys didn't see that. I forgot. I'm not sharing my whole screen, but I accidentally opened up the print window. Or you can have it roll over to-dos on command. So that's really helpful as well. You have to have the daily notes plugin installed or periodic notes. And then a note folder is set for those plugins. It has to have 2 or more notes, and all notes must be named in the format that you use for daily notes. So the normal format is year, month, day. So the 4-digit year, 2-month day, or 2-digit month, and 2-digit day. So this, it seems, like I said, pretty simple. I haven't tested this out, but Amar, if you're listening right now or watching in the future, this is what I would recommend checking out for you. Next, I want to touch on Barry's question. This is a really interesting one because I think we don't always touch on the differences here. But he's asking, what is the difference between productivity management and knowledge management? And what is the difference between institutional knowledge management and personal knowledge management? I think this is a really fascinating question. As I mentioned, we don't really touch on the differences between these different concepts, and many of them are quite interrelated in my mind. When looking at the concept of productivity, to me, productivity means relating specifically to the activities around your responsibilities and goals. These are the activities that you're doing, the things that move the needle forward. But what's neat about this is I think productivity is really a subset of knowledge management, because when you look at knowledge management more broadly, these are the organizational systems that you create for any kind of information that needs long-term storage and retrieval. So this could be notes. This could be writing that you're working on. It could be processes and procedures, or it could be tasks and projects and calendar items like you would store in a typical productivity system. So productivity and knowledge management are really one and the same. It's just that productivity is a subset of what I would consider knowledge management to be, and personal knowledge management at that. So then getting into his question about the difference between institutional and personal knowledge management, I would have to say that knowledge management at an institutional level is for teams, and therefore it's more focused on collaborative and historical record keeping. It's very heavily business related, and oftentimes business related processes or how-tos and things that help business efficiency get stored in an institutional knowledge management system. The prime example that I have in my mind for this is what I did at Discourse while I was working there. The whole company's history, including all the communications, projects, previous to-dos that employees had worked on, were all stored in one Discourse instance. You could literally go back and sort by the oldest topics and see the very earliest discussions at the company about what they were doing, what they were thinking about. To me, this is the epitome of what institutional knowledge management looks like, because companies change over the course of time, but having knowledge stored in a way that is retrievable and accessible and readable and usable allows a person who comes in several years later to get a full picture of what this company is about, where they've been, and where they are going. Personal knowledge management is similar, but again, it's very focused on personal things. I tend to see PKM focused primarily on three aspects: learning, thinking, and creating. Learning is the stuff you're consuming that you're interested in. It's the articles you're reading. It's the books, the podcasts, the videos, these live streams, things of that sort. You're trying to consolidate that information in one place because you're finding valuable nuggets in there. Then, second, with thinking, this is where you're taking those ideas and your own thoughts and your own feelings about them, and you're putting them into words. You're consolidating and making new connections, whether that be just in your own brain or in a tool like Obsidian. And third, with creating, is that you're taking that thinking, that learning and that thinking, combining it together and making something new out of it. And this doesn't necessarily have to be in your note-taking system, but this can be sitting down and having a conversation with someone about a topic that you've been learning about and sharing your own opinions about it. It could be making a YouTube video, doing a live stream, a podcast, writing a tweet thread, something of that sort. It can be any level of creation, really. It can be writing a report at work, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, in regards to creativity. It doesn't have to be this nebulous, floozy idea of creation that we often have in the West. Many of us are creative. We're all creative. It's just that we express it in different ways. And so a PKM system can help us get to being creative in our jobs, in our daily lives, and so forth. But it can also hold things like household management, recipes, processes, how-tos for taking care of things in your house or in your life, and things that overall help you be more effective and efficient. So that's where I would sum up the difference between productivity and knowledge management and institutional and personal knowledge management. To TLDR that, productivity is a part of knowledge management that's focused on the actions that move the needle forward, whereas knowledge management as a whole are the systems and processes that are created for the storage and retrieval of information long term. Institutional and personal knowledge management are very similar in that they're focused on storing resources and processes, how-tos, and any kind of information related to an institution or a personal life. But institutionally is more focused on being collaborative and historical and very heavily business related. And then personal is very individual or maybe family focused, and it's heavily emphasized on thinking, learning, and creating. Anyway, Barry, if you catch this at some point in the future, I really hope that this is helpful for you in breaking down these differences. But yeah, that's kind of the questions for this week. If you have any questions that you want to get answered on the stream, feel free to pop them in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this at a later point in time. Or there is in the description here a link to an Airtable form where you can submit your questions there. Happy to answer any questions here on the stream as we go. But for the time being, I would like to spend the rest of the stream digging into where I'm at with my productivity system. So let's open up the browser and we'll take a look. I read this article the other day that really resonated with me. I was digging into Todoist, trying to create some more structure and think through what labels do I need and what structure should I have? Should I go full on GTD and break things down by projects in there? What do I need? And go further. And I all of a sudden started to feel really, really overwhelmed by it. And in fact, quite stressed out. And that was not a fun experience for me. But one thing I've learned over the last year is that my personality type is actually an INFJ. If you're not familiar with this, this is a Myers-Briggs personality type. There's a website you can go to called 16 Personalities. It's not 100% accurate, but it could get you pretty close to the ballpark of a personality that you might be. So if you're interested in digging into this, definitely check out 16personalities.com. Take the test. It's completely free. But I've done a couple of these tests over time, and I've kind of ranged between different ones. But I've realized, especially after some self-reflection over this last year, that I believe I'm an INFJ through and through. There's so many of these things that resonate with me about this personality type. But I think what this article really hit on for me is there's been this tension that I have dealt with between wanting to be planned out and perfectly organized, but yet also have this fluidity and ability to more intuitively engage with my work. And in a lot of ways, that doesn't work together. You can't be rigidly and organized and planned and then live fluidly. It just doesn't work like that. And so you have to strike a balance somewhere in the middle. And I have been struggling with that. And part of the reason why I've been really pushing hard into refactoring my productivity system has been because I've been way on the unstructured, living my life more fluidly end of things. I kind of have a general sense of an idea of things that I want to accomplish or do, but I don't necessarily do them because I've been just not planning and not been very structured. So as a result, this effort into building a productivity system has led me more into this heavily structured side of things. And I got a little too far over there, which was causing me again to feel stressed out. This is where I've struggled with tactics like time blocking in the past. I can usually do it for about a week or two consistently, but then beyond that, it all falls apart because it's too rigid for me. It's not spontaneous enough. It's not intuitive enough for me to do that. And some people would say, well, you just need to discipline. I was like, no, this actively causes me stress when I do these types of activities for too long. And this article brought more clarity to me about that. I've known this for a long time about myself, but this article put it into clearer words so that I could understand myself a heck of a lot better. And so I think this is probably something I want to dig into as a concept on this channel at some point, is personality type and productivity systems. But it's a very deep thing, and I don't have enough understanding to do it at this moment in time. But anyway, a couple of the things that stood out to me in this article. Does an INFJ need structure? Let me zoom in so we can see a little bit more easily here. Yes. Although INFJs may not be heavily focused on structure as some of the other personality types, we do suffer if we are existing in a completely irregular fashion. This is something that I have been struggling with over the last couple of years. And so this is, like I mentioned, partly why I've been pushing so hard into having more rigid structure in my life. We have the judging component of our personality, an innate need for organization, structure, and planning. But since there is a caveat to that, our desires are not always black and white. The caveat is that though our all-or-nothing tendency fights against us, INFJs require a balance. Overscheduled, we may find ourselves in a miserable rut. Underscheduled, and the INFJ feels a bit useless. And that's I think, the summary of the feeling that I've had over the last couple of years. There really hasn't been a lot of structure to my life, just due to my job being very unstructured. And trying to put structure in my life, I over-structured it. And so I've got to find a little bit of a balance. And this is where I'm going to get into this in a minute, of some decisions I've made about my productivity system. Data Calamity is saying, I feel like once we've gotten ourselves in the position to push a specific ambition of ours in structures and planned manner, we start to think that we ought to be able to scale it up globally. But that ends up failing because we lose focus. Yeah, I think you're probably hitting on something there for sure. I think you're right on that. it can be very difficult to scale up ideas and work on it globally and at a productivity system level too. I mean, we often see this happening from productivity gurus and thought leaders, where I've got the system nailed down and I should just be able to cross apply this to everybody. But it doesn't work that way because we're all relatively unique in the way that we process and handle information. This judging versus intuition bit too is very interesting. The reason we fight both sides is our judging and intuition, two components of our personality, create an internal struggle, which is what I was mentioning previously. We want events planned, a schedule, some form of consistency, but we have the internal desire for spontaneity and freedom. So a free-spirited approach to living and a need to follow our thought processes and our gut, which is very much me. And I'm learning to embrace this more and more instead of trying to fight it. So let's see here. This is very much true. INFJs can have a habit of taking on too much. I'm very much a victim of that. Not victim. That's the wrong word. I'm very much susceptible to that. But I can also get lost in my head too. So what to structure, what not to. Intimidating to schedule my entire day. Again, like I mentioned, I struggle with the time blocking method often. And this person was experiencing the exact same thing I did. Just doesn't stick. So this person was also mentioning not scheduling, scheduling leisure kind of takes all the pleasure out of it, which I totally agree. We should have margin in our schedule where we can say, you know what, I feel like playing guitar right now or trying to produce some music or going for a bike ride. And we should be able to do that freely. But then kind of scheduling core workout, I think that is a helpful thing to do. So that's something that I pulled out of this is don't try to schedule everything, but try to schedule core work so that you are making progress on things and then finding the right balance. Avoiding an all schedule altogether is not good, but it can take some time to find balance. You have to take an inventory. That makes This was something that I found really helpful as far as creating some structure. This person had an academic advisor who said setting a weekly goal for pursuits and making sure you meet it. So this is one thing. But I like this. So this is weekly goal for pursuits outside of work and school and meeting it. So that's setting a priority for an objective for your week to do something that's not related to your responsibilities, something that you want to do. Set an objective for your hobbies. But then for me, I also think it's helpful to just set objectives for the week and work on them as you're able to. And so I'm going to get into in just a second about to take a look at the kind of the flow and process for this productivity system that I'm building. It's actually fairly simple. And then getting into some of the open questions that I have. But in the meantime, if anybody has questions about this idea of scheduling and overwhelm and all of that, do pop them in the chat. I would love to hear from you today. So this is some of the stuff that we've been working on over the last couple weeks. If you've tuned in previously, this might look familiar to you. It's kind of the overall concepts that I want to implement into the system, some of the principles and questions that I have, things that need to happen. I've kind of looked at different tool packages, but I've reimagined this to some degree, and that's what I want to get into right now. So this is a solution that I have created, and I've broken it down by level, vision, strategy, and tactics. I've got this framework in my head that I've been using to develop a productivity system for myself that allows me to not just get hung up on the tactical level, because many productivity systems are very bottom up approach. Like, just get all of your tasks and projects out into a system and start working from there. And eventually you can bubble up to this overall life mission, I guess, to try to keep you on track. But to me, I have found that that is very difficult to keep yourself focused on what's most important, because you've built this habit in yourself of capture everything broadly. And so everything has some level of importance, and then you have to go back and decide that. Instead, I'm a proponent more and more so of setting like your guiding principles and ideas up front, and then making decisions downstream from there. So it's more of a top-down approach to productivity versus a bottom-up approach, like most traditional systems are. And so I've got this broken into 3 sections: vision, strategy, and tactics. Up at the top, it's kind of a keystone habit in my life is the annual or seasonal review. Every December, I sit down and do an annual review. And I actually have a complete template if you're interested in checking this out. I've done a video on it. You can head on over to thinkeffective.co/annual to watch the video on my annual review. And then also download the free template there if you sign up for our membership site. It's completely free. So head on over there if you want to check that out. But it's this is what I do on an annual basis. I've started doing it more seasonally. I don't term it quarterly or monthly. I just more seasonally. If I'm sensing a shift in priorities and responsibilities in life, or even the flow of life a little bit, then I'm going to try to do some kind of a review. It's very similar to my annual review. I just eliminate some of the more big picture concepts from it. And I'm more doing just a check-in on myself on a seasonal basis. And out of this annual review comes the yearly theme and a view of my life at the wheel of life level. So I've talked about these things a number of times on the channel, on these streams, through my podcasts throughout the years. The yearly theme is really a guiding idea for my year or a period of time. My theme this year is the year of rebuilding, and this gives me a semblance of what my focus this year is going to be. And out of that annual review or seasonal review, I also do a wheel of life exercise. I have my life split up into about 8 different areas, ranging from finances to career to relationships, social life, health, and so on. And I give each one of them a 1 to 10 rating. And that gives me an overall picture of what's doing well and what's not doing well in my life. So these two kind of inform each other on what I should focus on. And from there, I'm building OKRs. I have been doing this for the last, I've done this part at least for the last 5 years, I believe, 4 or 5 years. And I've started building off OKRs in the last year. OKRs are really starting to get into the strategy. These are the high-level objectives that I want to intention myself towards pursuing. And so an OKR is an objective and key results. The objective is the outcome you want to see happen. It can be measurable, but it doesn't have to be numerical. And then the key results are the activities or results that you need to see happen that lead up into that objective being achieved. So if you think about it in terms of goal setting, you have lead metrics and lag metrics. Your lead metrics are your key results. These are the activities that we're doing to get us toward there. And the lag metric is the objective. It's the end result, the things that happen as a result of these activities. So these OKRs are just kind of a high-level picture of where am I going? Where am I intentioning myself to go? Obviously, these are not the only things that I'm focusing on. But I set these seasonally, I guess, more so. But they kind of flux in and out depending on what's going on and what's not in my life. I tend to see OKRs to be a little bit more fluid because life does change. The yearly theme is something that's broad enough that it can encompass a lot of different changes, and that can change and flex too over time. But OKRs, they can kind of fade in and out depending on what's going on in life. Right now, my 3 OKRs are financial stability, building community, and then systematizing things in my life. So, I mean, those are just kind of my short codes for them. They're not the actual objectives. But then these OKRs flesh out into initiatives and projects. I haven't really super defined the difference between these, but mentally, I guess I've been referring to them in this way. Initiatives are things that are really heavily driving an OKR forward. They are very high priority. Projects are more smaller scoped things that I'm working on that are related to this, but are not necessarily 100% deep into it. And this is where, from here, we get into tactics. Now, you can see I've got kind of more of a flow chart here because these directly inform each other. I've got this big arrow into the tactics. And the reason for that is there's not always a distinct tie between the strategy and the tactics, because the tactics ebb and flow on a day-to-day basis on what I'm doing. But these are the 5 tactics that I have picked to land on in my productivity system. First is a loose to-do list, coming back to that article about INFJs and structure. Anytime I have tried to give myself a heavily structured to-do list, I freak out. It becomes way too much structure to manage because I desire that flexibility. If I make things too rigid, then there's not that intuitive nature that I can try to figure out along the way. But if I go too loose with it, then it can be a little too, there's a little too much willpower that's required, let's put it that way, to keep things going. And so, the idea here is to create some kind of a loose to-do list. I'm seeing this as some lists around different major areas where I'm storing things, I'm prioritizing these lists, and really that's it. I could use a tool like Todoist. I could use Obsidian for this. I could use the bullet journal for this. Then I'm setting weekly objectives, and those mainly being in 3 main areas. 1, my work life. 2, my side business, effective here. And 3, personal life. So that would be like a leisure objective. Like, what am I going to do this week to just do something that I enjoy? And I think that will be helpful to have because it'll give me more of a fluidity in how I handle my week. I don't have to have my week structured out super hard, but I do need to make sure that I achieve those on a weekly basis. Then doing at a weekly level more core work planning, making sure that I'm getting 3 or 4 hours of deep focused work in on us every day, and scheduling that in relation to my energy zones, as we talked about a couple weeks ago: green, yellow, and red. It's a concept from Carey Nieuwhof in his book At Your Best. But everybody has their highest peak areas of energy through the day. For me, lately, it's been from like 9 to noon. Previously, it was more from like 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. But my sleep schedule has shifted a bit recently. And so that's the shift to that energy zone. And then sometimes in the afternoon, I have a little boost of energy too. We all have a green zone, a yellow zone where we're kind of in between, not tired, but not fully energized, and then a red zone where we're just kind of wiped out. And so my aim is to do some core work planning around those green zones primarily, if I can. On a day-to-day basis, doing, fleshing out the work that I am going to do, I want to experiment with doing Oliver Burkeman's 3-3-3 rule of daily planning. So what he does here is 3 hours of deep work, 3 tasks to get done, and then 3 maintenance items. I think this is really simple. It's also an amount of work that's designed to be less than the scope of your entire workday. And so I think that's probably a helpful thing to try out anyway. I'm going to experiment with doing that. And then also curating a prioritized list of projects. This I see as somewhat separate from my to-do list. Hey, Clement, welcome to the stream today. Appreciate having you on. But this prioritized list of projects is a little bit different from my to-do list in the sense that I need to have a high-level picture of what is where in my life. So let me give an example of this. There are projects that I need to be aware of now and actively working on. I need to be making progress on these things. I also have projects that I need to just have awareness of because they need to stay somewhat top of mind, even though I'm not actively working on them maybe this week. And then I have other kinds of projects that I want to track because they need to happen someday, but not necessarily right now. And if I try to structure these inside of a to-do list app, I have found that frankly just does not work. Todoist, OmniFocus, things, those kind of apps are not structured in a way that help me see that kind of priority state. I mean, literally the closest that you could get to doing this in Todoist is creating a board where you have a list of tasks on each section for these, but then you start messing with subtasks in Todoist, and historically and continually, subtasks in Todoist, I think, are just an utter mess. They're very challenging to work with. And so that's not really a good place to do that. But then also using OmniFocus, like OmniFocus could work for something like this if you could filter projects by tags, but you can't really. And that's a weird, goofy thing about OmniFocus. So to me, I'm not entirely sure where to build this out. And this kind of leads into some of the questions that I've had about the system. But anyway, this is kind of the summary of the 5 tactics that I'm choosing for this productivity system. A loose-ish to-do list, loosely organized to-do list, weekly core work planning, weekly objective setting, 3-3-3 daily planning, prioritized list of projects. Clement saying, complexity with Todoist to the temporal dimension, like priority for a month, week, or quarter, or year, while keeping the project structure. Yeah, I think a lot of these outline-based task managers actually struggle with this in a lot of ways. I do tend to agree with Carl Pauline's philosophy around task managers, that task managers are not great project managers. They're good for managing tasks, individual atomic level actions that need to happen at a point in time. They're not great for handling high level, what am I focusing on now broadly? What are my goals? What are my objectives? They just don't handle those types of things well. And I think this is why there's been a lot of people drawn to softwares like Notion or Obsidian for managing tasks, because there is a capacity and a flexibility to be able to build this overarching picture of your life inside of there, from the top all the way down to the bottom. So this kind of gets into the open questions that I have. And this is where I want to spend a little bit of time fleshing out some answers today, because this is going to be an experiment. And actually, I would love eventually to maybe build this out into something that we all could use if anybody's interested in that. But literally, like, where do I store these to-dos? And I'm going to open up this a little bit here. And I'm just going to start fleshing these out. Because in my mind, storing to-dos is relegated to really 3 places. Todoist, yeah, awesome, Clement. I'll keep that in mind. I know I've been toying with this idea of building out like a pre-conceptualized Obsidian vault that we could offer for sale here at Effective. Designed specifically around this concept of the VST approach. Again, I hate that name. It's kind of weird, but I got to figure out something different for it. But anyway, been looking at building something like that, and then offering it as a product, similar to what Thomas Frank is doing with his Notion templates, Ultimate Tasks, and Ultimate Brain, or whatever it is that he's just released now. But where am I storing to-dos? The cool thing, though, about this system and idea is that a lot of this is interchangeable with tools. So you can store your annual review and your yearly theme and your wheel of life and your OKRs and all of this in different tools. You could use Notion for this. You could use Apple Notes or whatever you're most comfortable with. And these tactics are really flexible too. Obviously it'd be really easy to just pull all of these into one tool like Obsidian, but you could also really easily say you're going to store all of this high level stuff inside of Notion, or and then do your like tactical work on paper or somewhere else. It's like the ideas are very fluid in a lot of ways. But where am I storing to-dos? What's going to work best here? So the options that I've been considering right now are Todoist, Obsidian, and the bullet journal. Let me unpack those. Yes, I am between jobs. And yeah, you could use something like Jira as well. It's amazing what you could do. I mean, a lot of these principles are very cross-applicable across systems and platforms. Todoist, this is kind of just the gold standard for a task manager. In a lot of ways, it's cross-platform. I already have a subscription to it. I don't have to change tooling. I'm already using it. It's also really good for recurring tasks and for planning like a list of things that need to happen on a day. Obsidian, because if I am already tracking the high level stuff, it kind of makes sense to keep the task level stuff in Obsidian too. Despite the fact that, I don't know. It's not as easy to capture stuff into Obsidian, though. There are ways you can do that. And then a bullet journal, just because I love the bullet journal. It's been a little difficult to manage some of the higher level picture stuff, but if I'm just doing day-to-day task management and maybe writing out my plans for the day in the bullet journal, that's really not as big of a deal then, because all of the high level stuff is done inside of Obsidian. And so honestly, if I were to say like the two that I'm leaning towards right now, it's probably Obsidian or the bullet journal, but I am not entirely certain. This is probably the next level one. This one's related to projects and then planning. Ooh, that is not what I wanted to do. Where and how to list projects. So this is an interesting question. Oh, right. Yeah, Clement. I think, yes, you're exactly correct on this. If you are working in a job, more than certainly you're going to have to-dos coming into you that come in from, say, Jira, work management software, or from Notion, or your email, even from a tool that you don't choose. You're definitely going to have to account for that in whatever system that you build. That's where capture is really important, for sure. Where and how to list projects. So again, coming back to this idea here is I want to maintain a prioritized list of projects that may or may not be separated from my lists of to-dos. I want to just get a high-level idea of what's most important to me right now so that I can plan better. And then if I need to get into that, I can. I think probably the one place that makes the most sense here is Obsidian, but as I mentioned, I could also use Todoist for this as well. I'm not as keen to do this in the bullet journal because this is something that's going to be shifting around, but I could use something like a whiteboard. Or if I wanted to do it digitally, put that there. Use Miro for that. That would work. And then priorities, what should I use? Honestly, I think I've settled on this, like active, aware, and like someday. Maybe not the direct names that I'll use, but the concepts are there. Active are the things that I'm active, like the projects that I'm actively working on right now. So keep in mind, I should note this here. This is for projects, not necessarily for individual to-dos, but these are the projects that I'm actively working on right now that are pushing the needle forward. These aware projects are projects that are not necessarily backlogged to some point in the future, but they're things that are not the highest priority right now, but there are things that there will be some motion on them. I do need to keep them top of mind so that I don't forget about them. And then someday, these are projects that, again, as I mentioned earlier, will happen someday. Maybe not 100% committed to them. This is more of like a backlog. So maybe, but I like the term someday better than backlog. Hey, Nicholas, welcome to the stream. Good to see you all today. For anybody just joining in too, by the way, we're doing a deep dive into my productivity system that I've kind of finally settled on some high-level picture for it. If you want to scrub back in the stream, I've already kind of walked through a lot of it. Now I'm answering some of these open questions, and I'm just kind of giving myself some choices and needing to figure out what the heck that I'm doing. So again, these ones, I'm going forward with those. This is going to be my project priorities here. Maybe I'll add one more. Maybe I'll add an unsure. So unsure would be, this is an interesting idea, but I am completely unsure if I'm going to do it at all. Someday is, this is an interesting idea and I plan to do it at some point. Aware is actively on my plate, but not necessarily actively working on it. I need to keep it top of mind. And then active being, I'm working on this right now. This is a project that is moving the needle forward. And then lastly, where to conduct planning. I think the one that makes the most sense here is like an Obsidian daily note. I could also do this in the bullet journal. So if you see a theme that's developing, you see a theme, it's kind of between Obsidian and the bullet journal for a lot of this. Yeah. So impact, as you're talking, Clement, is definitely projects that are in these have impact. One of my main focuses is to try to minimize the amount of work that does not have impact. on my plate, because it's so easy to get caught up in riffraff. Obviously, there's going to be stuff that I'm not going to be able to get rid of that doesn't have much impact, but I want to be as ruthless as possible in regard to that, because then the more time that I can spend on impactful work and neglecting non-impactful work, then I think that's a really important thing. I'm just remembering I should list off up here something about this, just so that I remember. 1, 2, 3. Just kind of objectives that I want to maintain. Okay. So back to this, picking tooling. I think one of my hesitancies with picking tooling is getting stuck in a system that I don't like, but no system is perfect. And I think I'm going to need to just buckle down with that and be all right with it and try to work through the limitations of a system instead of run away from them, because I know that can be a hesitancy that I have is to want to run away from difficulty at times. The other thing too is to not be so rigid with it as well. To be able to use systems that I find useful and helpful. So for example, I mean, if stuff has a genuine due date on it and it needs to be done by a certain day, I could always just have a list of those things in Todoist. Well, right. I'm not going to get rid of Obsidian. It's going to stay in my workflow. It's just a matter of like, am I going to go the next level with it? Am I going to put all my productivity stuff inside of there? The thing is, though, okay, high level, I've been using kind of these 3 systems with over the last couple of years. Some kind of a task manager, whether it's Todoist. I've been using Obsidian, sometimes even for tasks and notes, and then the bullet journal. I like all of them to some degree. They all have unique strengths and weaknesses. What's the challenge for me is I'm telling myself this narrative in my mind right now that I don't know, I'm feeling hesitant about committing to one of them. I can't quite get down to the actual the wording for it, so I'm just having a bit of difficulty with that. But bullet journal, I really like this because it disconnects me. I can easily use it when I'm with my family, if I need, or on the weekends, on days off. I don't feel like I'm getting into work mode when I'm using the bullet journal to note down personal tasks and things of that sort. It's also therapeutic to be able to write things down. In a lot of ways, Clement, yes, what belongs where is the question. But I'm also the question too, coming back to some of the things we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Single system or multiple tool system? To me, there's something appealing about putting everything in one place, because if I need access to something, I just go to that one place to get it. But a multiple tool system can also leverage that. Yeah, and you're talking how we can link them? Yes, that does make sense too, because you can very easily link different tools. The bullet journal is a little difficult to link, but you know. So this is the hardest part for me. Bullet journal, analog, love it. can be a little difficult. Plus, if I start doing this, then I'm not storing projects there. And if I want to put project lists alongside of projects there, then it's a little goofy. It's separated. For example, if I had a Kanban board in Obsidian with my projects and status, I couldn't just click on the card and go into the project list itself. I'd have to look up tasks related to it in my bullet journal. I'd either have to create a spread for that specific project or just list them in my daily log. I don't know how I'm going to do that or what I want to do there. Using Obsidian is great because there's so much flexibility with this. I could use a number of different plugins to handle tasks. I could use Data View if I wanted to. I could use the Tasks plugin. I could use... There's one more. I can't remember the name of it right now. There's lots of different ways to store tasks inside of Obsidian. You could use your daily notes. You could use project-specific ones. I like that idea, but I get a little hesitant of doing that because it's difficult to capture into Obsidian. Again, there are ways around that. I could use Siri shortcuts pretty easily on my iPhone for that. But there's this hesitancy inside, and I haven't completely narrowed down what that hesitancy is. And then Todoist, it's just familiar. But I constantly run into the limitations of Todoist. It's easy to capture. Yeah, and see, Clement, this is kind of what I'm looking at too. Like, do I do the project level management in Obsidian and then just use Todoist as my task list? Maybe just have a couple different buckets for tasks in there. You could go full on time sector system like Carl Pauline does, with instead of doing any kind of project related work, you just sort your tasks into folders based upon when they need to happen. And I think that's an interesting idea. My brain has not really grokked that one. I'd probably have to spend 3 months with it before I got into the flow of it, but that's an option. Jacob says, I use Notepad as first quick go-to and then process it in Notion. Yeah, that's another really good idea too. Drafts is an awesome app for the phone as well, if you have an iPhone. So that's something that might be an option for like quick capture. I could also just use a daily note in Obsidian, have that up on the screen for capture, depending on what I'm doing. So this is where I get stuck, folks. This is where I get stuck, is making a decision. And I need to have a decision on this. So I need to make a decision what I'm going to do. So I guess I can classify this in probably a couple of different ones. Todoist in Obsidian. Bullet journal in Obsidian. Or just Obsidian. I don't like some of this. You could mix in. I've done this in the past actually, and it was quite effective. Let me break it down a little bit. I was using the bullet journal, and I was finding its limitations a number of years ago, and I started using Notion as kind of my high level view of things, and it worked actually quite well combined with the bullet journal. Then it fell apart because I made it a little too heavy and structured. I got a little inspired by August Bradley and over engineered my system a little bit. And I mean, his system is really deep, but it's way too engineered for my needs. And so kind of what I'm thinking through here is I could just use the bullet journal and then build out some of this in Obsidian and some of this in the bullet journal. So I would probably do, if I did the bullet journal, I would probably keep my loose to-do list there. I would probably put my weekly objectives inside of Obsidian and start with a daily note every day that just links those in, or at least looking at one single, make a recurring habit of looking at what I call a daily document to review those objectives. Keep my prioritized list of projects in Obsidian. Daily planning in the bullet journal. And then, right. Yeah, Clement. Then this is totally something that I have struggled with, because I know some folks do some kind of a hybrid system. Digital versus analog is really tough. I love the benefits of analog. Love the benefits of analog. And I love the benefits of digital. And I hate the drawbacks of both. But it's so hard because you feel drawn to one or the other because you interact with your brain differently in both. And so then that's this idea of Todoist in Obsidian is it's all digital. I can link things to Todoist in Obsidian, and I could link to Obsidian from Todoist. And that makes kind of sense. I could do some planning in Todoist. I could do planning in Obsidian. There's a lot of flexibility there. Same thing with being all in Obsidian. It just all happens there, and it's all interconnected and interlinked. So, yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I really enjoy the flexibility that analog offers, but maybe I need to reset my expectations too. Because especially, that's the thing, is that I have found in the past is that analog does not scale very well. It's really good if you have a limited set of responsibilities, but as soon as you start dealing with a rapid fire amount of tasks and projects and actions that need to be taken, calendar items and events, I've found the bullet journal to fall apart pretty quickly. And so that's another thing that I need to keep in mind. It's like, okay, how do I keep analog in the picture? Because I just find it to be less stressful and less anxious for me, but while still maybe primarily having a digital system. I guess maybe that could involve doing my planning on paper and working on my day plan off of paper, and then while still using digital tooling for calendaring and things like that, because I don't find that very easy to do. So minimizing, like, keeping the to-do list aspect on paper, but then using paper for the planning, the daily capture, kind of my daily workspace, fleshing out ideas, brainstorming things, and then bringing it back into whatever digital system that I'm using at the end of the day or whatever it is. That's an idea for sure. And then that kind of makes a fourth option. Then maybe I won't term it bullet journal. Maybe I'll just term it analog. Oh man, I'm so indecisive today. That's not atypical. Maybe I'll just term it that way. Yeah, so then it goes into what goes where from here. That's the ultimate question. I think this is the tool set that I've settled on. the two questions that remain are, do I keep Todoist in the mix? Yeah, you're probably right here. Write my main problem and check which setup solves them. Okay, well let's take a step back then. We'll follow Clement's advice. What are my main problems? I'm actually just gonna do this in a block. Do this here. This is the other challenge too sometimes, is that I end up going in circles with making decisions like these. And so being able to do this in public a little bit helps me to avoid that a little bit. Obviously, it's not perfect, but all right. So main problems with my productivity systems. Change the color on this. Extend out the canvas a little bit here. Main problems. First and foremost is overwhelm. Hey, Clement, have a good evening. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. The VOD will be available. The recording will be available afterwards. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead with this. Clement, leave some comments below after the fact. Let me know what you're thinking. And if anybody has any insights to provide too, feel free to jump in. Main problems though, overwhelm. I often feel overwhelmed by the number of things going on in a traditional task manager GTD style setup. Way too many choices, way too many projects, way too many tasks. And I've tried lots of different ways to mitigate that. And unfortunately, I don't really have a solution to it. So I want to mitigate overwhelm. That's partly why I like analog methods, because there's a lot that's baked in that, for example, with the bullet journal, month to month, if you don't want to continue something, just don't carry it over to the next month. There's a natural roll off point there for tasks. It doesn't just stay in your system forever. If you don't actively migrate it over, you don't carry it over. Another problem is like easy integration from top to bottom. This is why I've tried to design this system here for the vision, strategy, tactics, because I've wanted a level of integration from where I see myself going, where I need to go, what I need to build into, down into what I'm doing on a day-to-day level. I'm actually going to open up the other board that I've been working in, because this is a concept I've been working on for quite a while. I started maybe last summer on this. Came to this idea, where I've got different areas of work, ideas, projects, actions, having some kind of a personal dashboard where I can dive into each one of those areas easily, depending on where I'm working for the day, and then, and then work in that. And then being able to dictate where I'm working, diving into through the personal dashboard, but by schedule kind of dedicating where I'm spending that time. So like I mentioned, I've been working on this for a long time. I've had so many thoughts, and I'm finally feeling like I'm getting close to being able to execute on it well. Um, but I've got so many diagrams here. How I see this all fitting together, and I haven't really pulled it together yet. And this is what I'm aiming to try to do here, and to try to do it simply and not over engineer it. So, easy integration from top to bottom. To give myself just enough structure to be effective. But also the least amount of maintenance. Because I know myself that if the level of maintenance on a system is high, I am going to push back on that psychologically. What's interesting about this, my weekly review used to be my favorite thing to do in the week. Like, I loved sitting down on a Friday afternoon with a cup of coffee at a coffee shop and doing my weekly review. Now, I'm lucky to even get myself to consider doing a weekly review. Something shifted in the last 3 years where psychologically, I am just not confident in a weekly review anymore. Or maybe it's just the fact that I haven't figured out I don't have a system, because I really haven't had a solid system for the last 3 years. Some of me has just been like honestly tempted to just go back to using OmniFocus because that was the last tool that I felt like I had some semblance of a system with it, but it still dealt with a lot of the same problems that I am trying to solve here. It's still flexible in other ways. I will say that I do really like David Sparks, Max Sparky, his approach to handling this stuff. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, I should probably watch this video. I haven't watched his talk with Nick Milo. I'm not going to do it right now, but at some point I will. Status board. So he used to use OmniGraffle as this kind of status board where he just listed out all of his active projects. For all of his areas, and then he's got a link that he clicks into the OmniFocus project for that. I think he's now moved that over to Obsidian. Let me see if I can find. If it's. Oh yeah, I could. Dashboard 2.0. There we go. That's what I want. No, not quite. I know he's got one. I've seen it before. Let's add Obsidian as free. While I'm looking for that, Alex has some comments in the chat. I agree that about overwhelm in a task manager, sheer numbers of tasks and projects. However, I use things 3 and I really like to see blank today each day. I can go find things to add, but I start blank. That is a really good thing about things. I might consider that too. I also love how easy it is to deep link into things too. It's pretty straightforward. Weekly review is motivating to get me an accurate inventory of projects and tasks so I can be confident in choosing things daily. Yeah, that's really the core of the weekly review. I have honestly just been terrible about doing it over the last few years. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. Come on, Ski. Must include dashboard. Dashboard. No. I know he... Where is this? Show me. No, I know there's a discussion on Mac Power Users Talk. Nice, Clement. That's great. I know when my kids have been up super late or gotten up super early, it's really fast to get them to bed, which is great. Some days. Okay. Search at Max Sparky. Status board 2.0. This is what I was looking for. It took me like 20 years to find, but so this is what Sparky does, Max Sparky. He uses a Kanban board inside of Obsidian, and then he links these to an OmniFocus project. Clement, I really love Sunsama. I think it's a fantastic tool. My one qualm with it is that I'm not running my calendars on Google or Outlook. I'm running them on iCloud. And so there's this inherent resistance that I have towards migrating because I've been using those calendars for so long. And so therefore it's been a trick. I was using Sunsama previously when I was working at Discourse because I had a Google account through them, so it made it really easy. But yeah, it's been the challenge. But I love Sunsama and be able to say, okay, I'm going to pull these 6 things in for today or whatever it is that I want to work on, block them off on my calendar, make sure I have some margin in there, and then I'm good to go. But this I do find is actually really interesting to have a kind of a dashboard like this. I've tried this in the past. What's really cool is that if you created a link to OmniFocus or say Things or some other tool where you can easily link directly to say a project, a list of tasks. Not a bad idea. But you can do this. You can actually show the link right on the Kanban card. I think I actually suggested that here. And I did a video that Max Sparky did about running a task system inside of Obsidian. And I kind of agree with his take on it in that video. It was an insider video for his Max Sparky Lab subscription. But I liked his take on it in that a lot of what you can do with Obsidian is great. It's really powerful. And in fact, he said it's in some ways more powerful than what you could do with OmniFocus. However, the challenge is maintainability long term. Is that a system that you can actually run for the next 10 years? And if those task plugins and the Kanban plugin and things like that were all baked into Obsidian and core features and maintained actively, then you probably could. But because the tasks plugin that workflow heavily relied upon is a third-party plugin, it's already actually changed maintainers once, and it's really only been around for less than a year, or maybe about a year. There's a little bit of hesitancy with that that I can say, and I agree with that take. If you're just starting off and you want to build something in Obsidian and you're okay with a little bit of maintenance with that, then that's fine. And also too, like, throw some money to the developers of those plugins to make sure that they can keep working on them. But there is something about using a tool that is financially sustained long term. I don't have any problem with that with Obsidian. I don't have any problem with that with Things or OmniFocus or Todoist even. They're long-term tools. They're not just going to go away. They're not going to be like Newton that goes away and comes back and goes away and comes back. And it's like Brett Favre retiring from football. Which I realize that all of you international listeners and watchers might not get that. But if you don't, Brett Favre was a football player in American football, for a long time, and he retired from the Green Bay Packers and came back to the Minnesota Vikings and all that. So it's just, it's kind of funny how professional athletes do that. But I'm digressing. I got to wrap up in about 15 minutes because I have something else I got to do today. But back to this. Honestly, it's kind of intriguing to me right now. I know I'm kind of getting a little stirred up by it, and I've tried it in the past, but I think I just need some better systems for it. It's maybe using a tool like OmniFocus or things, moving my systems back to those. I love the experience of using them. Todoist is great too, but it's just a little wonky when it comes to projects and stuff. Being able to just manage tasks in those tools, and then also have project lists there as well. Building my lists off of that, planning a task day, and then also doing recurrence in them as well. That's really helpful. Because that's the one thing that a lot of these systems, the analog system and then Obsidian, struggle with a bit, is recurrence. Calendaring, I mean, you could just use a calendar too. You'd have to factor in recurrence for a lot of things. Taking out the trash, it's kind of an important one. Scheduling a weekly review, scheduling an annual review. You might do those things based upon a calendar event, but unless you have a set routine on what day, what time you do those things, you do need to schedule them into your calendar. All right, throwing myself for a loop here. Oh, I'm just gonna rename this. Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense, Alex, to minimize that friction by matching project lists and the tasks, notes, and files. Are you using a para method? Because that makes sense to do that, I think. That's kind of a core thing from Tiago Forte's Tiago Forte's para method, is that you just have the same organizational structure in your Node app, in your task manager, and in your file system. You don't have to think about it. GWiz says, I had the same epiphany recently, wanted to move everything into Obsidian, ended up keeping my tasks in Todoist and Teamwork, but adding metadata, the why in Obsidian. Yeah, and the more that we talk about this today, the more and more I'm convinced that Obsidian is the perfect layer for managing the big picture. But to manage the individual details, other tools are best suited for that. So to me, it's analog. Does that make sense? Task manager, does that make sense? I am 100% settled on Obsidian. It's just, all right, so I'm going to make a decision right now, accountable on stream, that Obsidian is staying in my workflow, and essentially the cutoff point for what I'm doing directly in Obsidian, not that, is here. Managing the big picture. And some of this, I mean, I could do in Obsidian, but it's probably best served to do it elsewhere. And so that's what I'm going to commit to do. Could I put tasks in Obsidian? Sure, but I don't feel confident in that. I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at earlier. It's like, I feel hesitancy. I just don't feel confident in using Obsidian as a task manager. That being said, completely possible to link tasks from another tool into Obsidian. So that's not at all. I could use Todoist, Things 3, or OmniFocus for this. I do need to pick one of those probably. So then then it comes to the question, what do I do here? This is the perennial question that I have struggled with. Maybe I use a task manager and then I plan my day on paper. Like I work off of paper. My paper is my unstructured workspace for the day. Maybe I just create a 2-page spread or a 1-page spread every single day. Yeah, that's good. I like that idea, Alex. That makes a lot of sense too. You don't have to be super rigid about it. As long as it gets in your system somewhere and then you have a way you can retrieve it. The beauty about Obsidian is if you do put tasks in there, you could use a real simple data view query to pull all the open tasks. And then when you've migrated it, just check it off in Obsidian. So yes. Yeah, I'm not necessarily trying to figure out hard lines, but I want to figure out where. And then if I don't have hard lines, I need to have that kind of a system in place to migrate things around, to make sure that, oh yeah, it's in the right idea. It's in the right spot, so I don't miss it. Because I think that's another fear that I have with some of this, is that if I don't have it all in the right spot, then I'm going to miss it. So yeah. So yeah, this is the ultimate question here. Planning. Do I plan on paper? Do I plan in a tool like Sunsama? Do I plan in Obsidian on my daily note? Yes, I have tried the Todoist plugin in Obsidian. Yeah, you're right, Alex. The weekly review. I just got to do it, right? Just got to do it. Anyway, yes, I've tried the Todoist plugin in Obsidian. And it actually works quite well for querying. I do like that. I've been experimenting with it a little bit. And yeah, I really can't complain about that. You just basically write a filter query inside of the block that you create, and then it pulls all those tasks in. The other thing that I know is I've got to keep in mind with this system here as well is I do manage my content projects for effective in a content calendar inside of Notion, just because I find it insanely easier to do than doing that in Obsidian. But I could do that too. I may try collapsing that at some point and see how that works. Okay, so I appreciate you all hanging out with me through this today, because I know that I am getting closer to making some of these decisions. I'm going to clear this out. I do keep coming back to the idea of this status board that Max Barkey has. I was trying to create something like this myself prior to him doing this and sharing it. But where am I at here now? So now really my question is, I've landed on Obsidian. Then now I need to pick a task manager. Do I do Todoist? Things. And am I just changing for the sake of changing? Yeah, Alex, the blank today thing, I really like that idea because it gives you kind of a blank slate. I love that blank slate idea. And then I also need to choose planning. Yeah, I love the blank slate idea of being able to plan, like, all right, what am I going to do today? Being able to pull things into like a plan for the day is really nice, and just kind of define that out. But then I want to have some structure to my day too, to say, okay, I've got this 3-hour block of deep work that I'm focusing on. What are the 2 main focuses of that? Because I'll probably split that into 1.5-hour chunks each. Why is this a little bit better here? Okay, going ahead with Obsidian on big picture. I'll create some kind of a dashboard in there. Yeah, I do agree, Clement. Things has a lack of integrations. It works well if you need to link to stuff, because it does have that direct linking into the app like OmniFocus does. Todoist is nice though, because it's basically an open API and every tool under the sun integrates with it out of the box. Sunsama, Akiflow, all these planning tools that are out there, they all integrate with Todoist because it's API based. I guess, okay. Why am I open to looking at something other than Todoist? Why do I resist Todoist? I think the part of the reason why I resist Todoist is I don't know, I harken back to OmniFocus a lot. And I don't like OmniFocus. I mean, I used OmniFocus for probably 6 years as a task manager because it was the best one out there. And it just jived with me. But the problem I had with OmniFocus is I constantly over-engineered my setup, and that was a challenge. So yeah, I kind of resist Todoist a little bit. Part of it too is that Todoist's paradigm on a lot of things can be a little confusing. Yeah, and two, that's also a thing, Clement, is that once you tick a task, it's gone. It's basically as if you deleted it. Things allows you to see completed tasks, as does OmniFocus. The bullet journal obviously does too. I like the sense of progression that you get in a bullet journal when you tick things off. It just doesn't disappear off the list, and it's as if it never existed anymore. It's still there, but it's actively checked off. I know you can configure OmniFocus to still show completed tasks, which is kind of nice. Yeah, not sure. Like I said, though, I do need to come to a decision. And here's what I'm thinking. I'll just flesh this out here. I do have to have the ability to integrate from top to bottom, which means that I need to be able to link to something inside of my task tool. I need to be able to, if I'm going to have a list of projects, I need to be able to easily create a project in that task tool and link to it inside of Obsidian so that I can access those tasks if I'm not storing those tasks inside of Obsidian. I need to be able to do that. Something here off screen quick. Yeah, and see, this is where it gets a little interesting with Todoist, is I can create a task there, but I tend to like using the app, and it's not easy. It's not easy to get the link to that project in the app. Oh, you know what? Todoist, Clement, Todoist does have a filter now where you can show completed tasks right in the project. So that's kind of nice. I didn't realize that they had that. Anyway, I'm off screen, so it's kind of annoying. But in the app, I would imagine you can grab a link, a URL, or in the website, rather. I would imagine you can grab a link to the URL once you go into a project. I'm gonna just try doing that quick. Let's see what I get. Yeah, so you have to go to the website to get a URL to the project in the app. So you could link it that way, but it's not nearly as convenient as doing it in another tool. So that's a friction point with Todoist. The nice part, though, I will say, is that picking a task manager for this section of this is pretty fluid. I don't have to get insane about it. Yeah, filtering for done tasks would be nice. For sure. So the nice part is that I can easily plan on paper. I think to start off with, I am going to try to plan on paper, committing on stream here with you guys, planning on paper instead of using a full-on bullet journal. So that means this one's going to be gone too. Up here. I still may flexibly use this a little bit in the flow of things. I still like the rapid logging technique and filling out a bullet journal. So I guess maybe I won't full on do that. Maybe I'll just put that way. I still like having that flexibility there. So like Alex was talking earlier, maybe I just give myself permission to list stuff down on paper and then do the weekly review to bring it all together. And then the nice part, as I was mentioning with these, the task managers, is that, yeah, it's not the best to like flip-flop around and change stuff. But if I start off in, say, OmniFocus or things, I can always try it. And then if it's not working out, I can migrate it. And then the big picture side of it isn't lost, because that's staying in Obsidian. That is something I am committed to. And the day-to-day planning aspect of it isn't lost. It's just a matter of where am I collecting my simple lists of tasks and then projects that are related to it as well. So I think in regard to that, I think I'm gonna, this is an interesting commitment to make, and I feel a little interesting about it. But I think I'm going to give things a go. Now, I know one thing that may change this, I do know this, is that say the job that I am getting in the future, like say that they're primarily a Windows machine shop where they're only on Windows. In that case, I'm going to have to go with Todoist because Things doesn't have a web view. The OmniFocus web view is terrible. And Todoist is really the only task manager worth their salt that works cross-platform. And so if I can operate on Mac, Things and OmniFocus are definitely an option. But if I am required to use a Windows computer, I have done this in the past before. It is a pain in the neck to try to use a macOS, iOS-based task manager on an operating system that does not allow me to capture things in it or manage stuff on it. And so that's where I would probably switch back to Todoist. But I think going forward, I'm going to try to set things up in Things because it allows me the capability to do two things. One, it allows me to organize via area. And two, it allows me to organize things by projects inside of those areas and outside of those areas. I am not going to be super concerned with planning inside of Things. That's my day-to-day is going to be on paper. So yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Dante, welcome to the stream. Doing pretty well here. Clement, links to Todoist projects is a good point. I may explore this further. I have projects enter as tasks. I can share my old article if interested. Yeah, feel free to share that in the chat. I would love to read that at some point. I'll save that for later. Then Alex says, I've had to gorilla my whole office full of Apple devices and minimize my interactions with the Office Windows system. Yep. I mean, I used to work for an IT company that was 100% Windows, and I was such a Mac fanboy at the time. I could use Trello. That's true. I've used Trello in the past, but it's kind of been funky for me. It hasn't really jived with me because it's the being set only in Kanban boards doesn't work with the way that I think, but it does work for some folks, and so that's really good. That's kind of where I'm at. Anyway, I do have to end the stream here. Unfortunately, I went over a little bit longer than I wanted to today, but that's all right. We made some decisions. So you can expect next week as I build this system out, reports back on how it's going. I will definitely keep you up to date on this throughout the course of time. We'll see how things go, and I'll let you know if there are changes in the process too. If you are interested in grabbing our annual review guide, head on over to thinkeffective.co/annual to grab that. Sign up for free there to get access to that and all of our other free guides for our members. Plus, before we end the stream today, one last plug. If you've been finding value in these live streams and the content that we're providing on the channel here at Effective, become a channel member. You can click on the join button down below on YouTube, or you can head to youtube.com/effectiveco/join for one of our monthly membership packages. If you don't want to do that, find one of your favorite videos on the channel and just leave a super thanks, which is the thanks button below the video. Just as one simple way that you can show thank you for the work and effort that we've been putting into the content here at Effective. See, one last question. Do you know the periodic notes plugin has some new features like calendar sets where we can create different sets of calendars for such as personal life and work? You know what? I did notice this recently with periodic notes. I haven't dove into it too much. That sounds like it might be an interesting topic for a video, though. So I will add that to my list. And Clement, yes, thanks for joining. I do agree. I think there's a lot of folks who are asking these questions too. That's why I like doing these streams and doing this all in public. We can all talk about them, learn about them, think about them. The best thing that I can do, I can't solve everybody's productivity problem because everybody is unique, but I can at least share the struggles that I have had, the insights that I have too, I've learned over the years, and we can all grow a little bit further together. For those of you in the United States, have a fantastic 4th of July weekend. For everybody else in the world, enjoy your time. I am going to sign off for today. We'll be back next week on Thursday as planned and usual, about 1 p.m. Central Time. Until then, though, stay effective. Talk to you later.